You're listening to NFT 365, the first daily podcast on NFTs with your host, Fanzo.
All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. We are in the hundreds of, this is the episode, I would believe will end up being episode 113, 114, in that range, and excited to have a special guest today. And before we get into the special guest, I know for many that are playing along, we have a proof of podcast gamification that we've kind of added in here, and excited that, you know, for the month of March, it all starts back over. So if you collect 4 of our proof of podcasts, you actually end up becoming what we call a pop star. And I give credit to our Discord community for coming up with the name, and you'll get airdropped an NFT just for participating and coming along on the journey. And so the phrase for today's pop star giveaway is "Wag me," or "We're all going to make it." And so if you jump over in the next 36 hours over to NFT365podcast.com/pop, just NFT365podcast.com/pop, and you type that in, you'll qualify for your first of your 4 for the month, and then we'll have some fun with that. I want to thank the hundreds of people that jumped in and did it on February. We came up with the idea, and we decided to do what we do, and that's we pressed the damn button, and we pushed it out about a couple days after we came up with the idea, and we were kind of blown away that there were so many people that participated. So I just wanted to say thank you for all of those amazing loyal listeners. I know daily content is a lot, especially daily content from me every single day, and I'm excited. I have a good friend that we were just talking before recording that I have found some tweets from 2015, 2016. I've had the luxury and pleasure of being aligned with Sandy Carter, who will be our guest today. And I said this in a tweet, and I just want to put it out there as well. You know, Sandy was one of the very first executives in the tech space that really kind of welcomed me with open arms. And I remember feeling very empowered by that. And so for sentimental reasons, that actually it's even cooler that we get to come full circle about 7 years later, and we've been able to stay in contact and do some things over the years together as well. So Sandy Carter, thank you so much for being our guest today. Excited to have this conversation.
Well, thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here and to see so many amazing women on here. I already see Em on from Crypto Chicks, who is part of our Women of Web3 as well. And it's great to see the success that you've had, Brian, throughout the years. See, I knew it. I have a good judge of character, and I knew you would do just great things. And here you have NFT 365, which is an amazing podcast.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, actually, Em is one of our previous guests here on the podcast. And I don't think she knows this yet, but it's actually for the last 60 days, it's our most listened to episode is the one that we interviewed. So no pressure, Sandy, but Em set the bar very high.
Set the bar. We also have Rachel on from Binance US. Binance US is also one of our partners in our WOW3 as well. So hopefully these young ladies will also jump up here and contribute to our discussion.
Yeah, for sure. And so, Sandy, let's jump right into that. We'll start forward and then we'll go backwards a little bit. So can you explain a little bit about the event coming up for International Women's Day? And we're excited to be partnering with you on that as well. And give us a little bit of update on that. I'm going to put all of the notes in the show notes for those that are listening. Definitely going to recommend everybody RSVPs, but give us a little bit about the origin of it and then what people can look forward to.
Yeah. So, I came over to Web3 in December. I was the vice president at Amazon Web Services, and I was kind of used to being, one of about 20%, 25% women in the room. I always had another woman with me. I came over to Web3 and I was like, wow, it's just so unbalanced today in terms of diverse voices being heard, being at the table in so many different avenues. And so I really played around with it in December, went to some conferences, just, made a lot of connections. And then I realized in January that this was a moment in time where we're shaping what Web3 is, where NFTs are going to go, what the metaverse is going to look like. And in order to shape the next era of the internet, you need those diverse voices in the equation. And so I mentioned it to a couple of people, and they were like, yeah, somebody should do something about that. Somebody should do something about that. And I was like, well, why not me? And so I talked with a couple of different companies. I thought, there are some movements out there that are person-based, which are amazing. But I didn't see any big companies in Web3 getting behind getting more women, getting more diversity in Web3. And so Women of Web3, Unstoppable Women of Web3 were born. Our mission is really to make Web3 more accessible to everyone, to help with that first step of getting started, and to be action-oriented, not just to point out the deltas, but to do something about it, to launch education and to do networking. And for example, at South by Southwest, we're going to have our first in real life event for Women of Web3. And I'm so excited because we've already sold out the event. We're looking for a bigger space so we can have more women be able to come and network, meet each other, support each other as well. And Brian, just for a couple of numbers, today only 5% of the entrepreneurs in Web3 are women. And that, we just have to change that game. In order for anything to be innovative and successful, we need to have that diversity inside of it.
Yeah, those numbers are unacceptable in all different realms. And, I will say when I went in November to, NFT NYC event, I was actually very impressed with the diversity of voices and skill sets and the people that were kind of around us at that space. And what I found was that, there was, we go to a lot of events, of course, speaking and being a part of this, tech space especially. And it was very unique in the sense that I had never been to really an event that had the combination of, a developer with a artist, with a photographer, with a startup, venture capitalist, with a, marketer in Web3 to, an NFT creator, an NFT collector. And I was, one of the things that I also noticed was not only, diversity in gender, but also diversity in like the skill sets that required. And, Sandy, your background, for those that don't know, I was first, came in contact with you, with IBM. And funny enough, I got a message from, our friend Daniel Newman, who Daniel and I, hosted a podcast together. And Daniel's like, I think this is the fourth podcast that you've interviewed Sandy Carter on. And so I think it might be. So I want to say thank you for that as well, which is kind of funny how that goes all the time. But you were at IBM and then, of course, AWS, Amazon Web Services, and now at Unstoppable. Could you give a little bit about like your journey there? Because you mentioned that you've been very used to being one of the few women in many rooms, but you've also been an executive leader in a lot of these spaces, and you opened my eyes to Girls Who Code. I remember many of the IBM events I went to. Part of the obligation for us was to attend millennial and Gen Z events that were helping younger leaders start to be able to get their feet wet. And you've been a pioneer in that approach, and I think there's a lot to learn from, hey, how do we get more voices at the table? But like, what is the role that each one of us can take? Can you walk us through some of that journey for you? Because for me, you've been one of the leaders that have been leading the way for many, many, many years, long before Web3.
Well, thank you for that, Brian. I really appreciate it. I just love technology. I am a geek girl for sure. So when I was at IBM, I ran our social media program for all IBM. And so it really got me into that Web 2 movement very early, where I got to help shape all the we were the first to have a social media policy at a company as big as an IBM. We were the first company to advertise Twitter at an event. I know that sounds really strange today with so many people using and leveraging Twitter, but back then it was very rare that a big company would do or leverage something like social media. I don't know if you know this or not, Brian. When I left IBM, I actually left to go found a startup in artificial intelligence. And I did that because as I was working and watching what was happening living in Silicon Valley, I saw a lot of companies and countries sending people to the Valley to learn how Silicon Valley innovated, right? Silicon Valley was known as the place for innovation and great ideas, entrepreneurship. I saw Germany, for instance, send 60 executives over, pay for their stay for a year. And then when they went back, all their things that they learned failed because the culture there is different than Silicon Valley. So I created a startup that would do like a Myers-Briggs assessment of a company to figure out their culture and match it with innovation techniques. I did that for about a year. That's how Amazon found me, because I was doing that startup and they're really into innovation. So I did, social media, then all the artificial intelligence pieces. And then I moved to Amazon to tackle cloud, still in the Web 2 world. And again, just love the technology. I got into blockchain there. Amazon has a blockchain set of technologies, as well as all the analytics and data that runs on top. And that's really how I discovered Unstoppable, with the real big focus on digital identity and protection of that data being owned by a company, by a person, other than a company. Really got me excited, so that I could control my own data. That data would be my data. I could log in, like today I can log in with Unstoppable. I can log into a metaverse like Atlantis, or a DeFi application like Cook Financial, or a game, Sandbox or Decentraland, all from the same identity that I possess. It was just something that I had been dreaming about for quite some time.
And I love that you kind of walked us through that, kind of that journey too, as Web 2, right? There was a lot of things that, I think we've been implementing, we've been seeing, find success in Web 2. But I believe part of that decentralization switch is now we're actually switching that power, right? And we're flipping that, like, not only who has the power, but our ability to kind of reimagine how that power is kind of brought to life. And, I remember, some of those, early, I'd say 2015, 2016, 2017 days of, trying to get, brands onto social media, I laughed when you said, one of the first events that, had Twitter. I remember the Twitter announcement at the IBM event. I was actually, live streaming it on Periscope. I had spoke at that event that year, and I remember even, getting messages from some people in my circle of, like, Brian, enterprise tech is embracing Twitter, and you've loved Twitter since like 2010. And the nice or beauty of now with NFTs and Web3 is Twitter has almost had another, beautiful resurgence. And you brought up the phrase, or the term digital identity. And I know for many, we can kind of break down like unstoppable domains and where that kind of fits in what Unstoppable is as a whole. But when you and I were first talking, I guess it was like a week ago or so, you brought up the idea of this, how do we like redefine and establish this control around, digital identity? And it really hit home for me. Could you really kind of like break down what does digital identity mean in this Web3 space?
Yeah. So digital identity is the way that you get access to different applications and different, today it's different access to information. So if you think about today, you go and you sign into Twitter like we did today, and I have one set of personality there. If I now go and sign into LinkedIn, I have to sign in with different credentials, and I have different levels of engagement that are noted on LinkedIn versus Twitter. And if you think about it, I was one of the first on Twitter back in 2009, early 2009. And I, given the events and everything I did, I told everybody, get on Twitter. This is amazing. So I actually helped to build up the base for Twitter. But as I was building that value, the extraction of value really went to Twitter. They're 28 billion today. And that value has accrued to Twitter, not to me. That financial benefit accrued to Twitter. So if you think about Web3, now you're going to be using your identity, and you're going to be the one who controls your data. So no longer would people or companies go to Facebook to buy data to do advertising. They're going to try to entice you with rewards around your digital identity. That identity travels with you. It travels through the metaverse with you. It travels through gaming with you. It's your wallet. It's your healthcare data. It's your education records. It's KYC. And who knows, like in the future, digital identity is going to become even much more important than it is today. It will be used in all sort of apps that we can't even imagine. I was just speaking to a company yesterday, and they're like, ooh, we could do shoe size in that digital identity. So I think it's extremely important that this ownership rights puts power back in the hands of the users and not in the hands of a corporation or even a government, with everything going on today. And that's why I'm so excited about digital identity.
And I think to me, this is probably the most exciting part about Web3. And I know and I'm sure with you as well, there's a lot of people when I jumped in and kind of leaned in completely on Web3, there was people that were like, well, Brian, you're a natural early adopter, and Sandy, you're very much the same. We're willing to be kind of on that front lines. But for me, one of the things that I've been telling people that, it's the Web3 is the synergy and like the intersection of really technology and humanity in a way that I didn't know that we were waiting for, but it kind of presents itself in a way that for me, it's everything that we've believed in over these, many, many years of, how do we bring together, how do we give people not only control of their data, but their ability to impact the world, their ability to stand out from the noise. And that digital identity conversation, I think is extremely powerful. I'm curious, when you were at AWS, and when you left, with Unstoppable, talk to us a little bit about Unstoppable as a brand in Web3, because I think there's a lot of assumptions of brands in Web3 on either what their role is or how they're going to, kind of establish themselves. And I will say, Sandy, you jumping over there immediately popped them to the top of my radar. And then I also saw you brought over one of my dear friends who I often consider one of the smartest human beings that I've ever met, Lisa Sicat DeLuca. And so you're building, the team over there is amazing. I know there was already some amazing people there beforehand, but talk to us a little bit about Unstoppable and like kind of them as a Web3 company.
Yeah, so Unstoppable was founded by Matt Gould back in 2018. And his mission was to provide this user-owned and user-controlled identity. I think the team is fabulous. They were profitable during that first 6 months, which is, as you know, startups. That's pretty amazing. And the value proposition and product market fit here, I think, is really helping propel Web3 forward. So the first thing that the company created was a domain name, but not a domain name like a Web2 domain. This is a domain name with special powers. It is user-owned and user-controlled. So you probably see people with, like myself, I have sandy.nft. That is my domain name. You can get .nft, .crypto, .x. And those special powers are not just that it's user-owned and controlled. It is yours, so you own it. If I had to summarize Web3 in one word, it's ownership. So there are no renewal fees, there's subscriptions, you own that. That's your identity. It is decentralized, so it's created on the blockchain. So any third party can read that database and can resolve that name without our permission. Hence why you see, Parcel, which is a Web3 realty company, they use our domain names. They don't need our permission to do that. Any platform can build a tool or an application using that domain without risking being shut out in the future. And we know that, many companies, just recently Facebook have done that to past apps that built on top of them. But the domain name is just the start of where we're going. If you're familiar with the Amazon flywheel, that domain name is how people begin in Web3 because it connects your wallet, helps you not to make the mistakes of typing in that long series of characters and numbers. But we also now have kind of the first couple of layers of that digital identity, the ability to connect your email, the ability to connect your humanity, do a proof of humanity check, KYC, those type of things as well. And then the vision is to fill that out over time. So what really got me fired up about the company was their focus on digital identity, and those domains with superpowers are the way that people are starting today in the Web3 world.
I love that, and we do. I have the Unstoppable domains as well with isocialfans.nft, and there's lots of other domains that go in there as well. And I love that you brought up the superpowered element of it, because it's the combination of a domain with transparency and also a domain with customization that really we haven't seen in any other domain kind of connections, right? And even the idea of being able to connect a short domain to our Twitter account, which I was I didn't realize that was actually one of the benefits on Unstoppable. And I've used some of the other domain services that exist here in Web3, and I think part of what struck me in one of the big differences, and I'm not paid to promote this on Unstoppable, but for me, I'm just sharing my view, was not only the customization, but really the open-ended, that I can see additional things being kind of rolled in. And it's kind of very early days of let's just say, the .NFTs, the .x, the cryptos, and really how do we connect, our wallet to our website, to our social, our social media. And I've said this for a good while, that I believe, part of this digital identity conversation is also the fact that, now that we are valuing and putting a value on, digital assets as well as our own digital identity, now we have to figure out ways that we can, express ourselves, ways that we can, stand out from the noise, ways that we can actually celebrate, the values that we have. And, I have my PFP here, is the crypto chicks. And I know, Sandy, I see that you have the Lazy Lions and the Fame Lady Squad. I also know, your crypto chicks and Women Tribe. I see there's some Women Tribe friends in here. And for me, I will say when we started the podcast November 11th, 113 days ago, the first early women projects that we minted was, we minted Alpha Girl NFT, and we minted the Women Rise project right out of the gate on day one. And I was doing some research on both of those projects. And, I spend about 4 hours each day researching these NFT projects, and both of them stood out to me in their conviction in like their why, their conviction in their mission and vision of what the future was. And for those that don't know, both of those projects did not sell out right away. And this was, November, early December timeframe. And if we fast forward, I was blessed to kind of be a part of the Fame Lady Squad, and then the Crypto Chicks was one that I absolutely fell in love with the vision there. And now we look at January and February. And I was just pulling up, one of the tweets that we put out the other day, and of our last 15 NFT projects that we've minted 7 female-led projects of the last 15, and it's very exciting for me, not only because of being an ally and an advocate, as a girl dad of 3 little girls as well, that that this is I'm starting to feel that change, to see that change. I'm curious from a standpoint of, we have the event, and I'll put the Unstoppable Women of Web3, event. I'll put those notes here in the show notes for everybody to check out. I recommend, putting on your calendar. There's going to be, I believe YouTube TV, and there'll be, you can follow the hashtag on Twitter as well. I'm curious from your standpoint, when you're, Sandy, with your experience and the amount of amazing women that you've worked with over the years that are trendsetters, and that are putting that are willing to kind of disrupt and reset the table, and if the table doesn't allow them, they can pull up their own chair. What would be your advice to women that are listening to this podcast right now, that are still looking for their place, still looking for what is their role in Web3, or how can they stand out? What would be something that you kind of give them to kind of give them that next step, or hopefully you kind of push them forward for the next, where we're going with Web3?
Well, first I would say that, you should learn about everything that's out there in Web3. A great way to do that is to attend our day on March 8th. We will do like a very basic, what is Web3 101 as a YouTube session, 9 a.m. Pacific time on International Women's Day, which is March 8th. But we're also doing a 24-hour Twitter space. And Brian, I thought you would love this. So we have different speakers coming on all throughout the day on topics like, what is the federal and state government saying about this in the US? What about Europe? How do you build a community? What are the elements of blockchain? Why decentralization? Why does it matter? What is digital identity? So all of those topics are being covered. I'm going to try to attend as many as I can because they look so amazing. So the very first thing I would say is you should learn. I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, I actually moved one of my interviews for the podcast off of that day so that I could attend more of that Twitter space. So I'm with you on that. It's a great job.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And so many women have, come forward. We've got 66 companies right now who've come forward. We've got a 24-hour day. So we've got some 30-minute sessions. Some folks are combining together, to teach. So I would say the first thing you should do is learn, just drink it all in. It's a lot. You may not understand all the acronyms right away, but, take that first step to learn. The second thing I think that you should do is start to interact. Twitter spaces are a great place. So what you're doing here is magnificent to start interacting, asking questions. Discord, which I kind of have a love-hate relationship with.
You aren't alone. You aren't alone. I have. Oh my God. It's like, I think it's more of a hate-love relationship, not a love-hate. Yeah. It's much more hate first, love because we're kind of there. So I'm with you.
I do love Telegram though, and I communicate with lots of my partners on Telegram. So kind of learn, get in there. So learn first, and then interact. And then the third thing you have to do in Web3 is you have to play with it. One of the things that we're going to teach in our YouTube session on the 8th is how do you get a wallet? How do you keep that wallet secure? How do you buy, Bitcoin, Ethereum, crypto? And then what do you do with it? How do you go buy an NFT, for example? Those type of things. So you've got to play with it. You've got to get in there and get your hands dirty. Of all the technologies I've seen, this is one that you really can't just be book smart on. If you don't get in there and try it out, it's really hard to get the feel for it. And you can do that. A lot of questions I'm getting, and in fact, part of my South by Southwest keynote is around use cases for business. So you can try it out as an individual, but there are also all these emerging use cases that are occurring. And so it's not just a consumer thing trying it out, it's also a business thing trying it out as well. Yeah, I could just do one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that on that concept. I think we sometimes overlook the business brand role of that as well. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I also need to say that we are developing a mentoring platform. So, I'm chairman of the board. I guess I should say chairwoman of the board of Girls in Tech. It's an amazing organization that really touches that college age girl or woman up to about 2 or 3 jobs outside of that. And they've got a mentoring platform that they are opening up on March 8th for Women of Web3. So anybody who wants to learn more about Web3. And we didn't want to have companies have to fund a sponsorship to be part of Women of Web3, but we asked different groups to donate in different ways. So like Decentraland gave us land and Decentraland to build our headquarters. Capital Factory gave us physical space at South by Southwest to host our first in-person event. And many NFT communities have also donated NFTs that we are auctioning off. And so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. I did pin a tweet on it. So we've got a lazy lion, we've got a pudgy penguin, a deadhead, we've got a crypto chick, long necky ladies from Nyla, who's the 13-year-old amazing woman, crypto tech, Bella, mojo heads, deadheads, ancient warriors. Ancient warriors is a really cool project of Black and brown artist. I did pen a tweet here if you want to bid on it. So, I'm going after that crypto chick because I've always wanted one. So I'm going to go after that one. So you have to beat me out for that one. But we're giving all that money to Girls in Tech to fund this mentoring platform for that next generation of women as well.
I love that, Sandy. And I the Girls in Tech side of the house, I've been a part of many of those events, the IBM events that you had in the past. I remember There's one, vivid one that I remember with, startups, and it was amazing seeing, all of these, powerful women coming in front of this kind of enterprise tech blue suit wearing audience. And I've always been I've taken great pride in kind of being a little bit of a disruptor in that space as well myself. And I'm, I will say, like, one of the things that you've done really well, and I have to give a lot of credit also to these the women-led projects that are in the NFT space, and many of those leaders are here in the audience on Twitter Spaces, and that means a lot as well. Is they've also really welcomed in those that identify as male as allies, as advocates as well. And I think for me, I've shared this a lot, especially in the mental health space. There was a good while where I couldn't figure out like what my role was in the mental health conversation, and I kind of was stuck in this place of, well, I'm not the PhD, but I'm also not the one that that knows everything and has that as my full-time job. And I came up with this, like, just the mindset that I realized was, like, my role was more of as that advocate, as that ally, to get the right people in the wrong rooms and the wrong people in the right rooms. And what I mean by that was, part of it was, for me, was making sure that these conversations didn't just happen in, podcast episodes that were women focused, right? These conversations were happening in all podcast episodes, or all episodes, or if we're, doing a Twitter space, that we're mentioning these things, because I think a lot of times these conversations are siloed to the point where the people that we know that need to hear the information probably aren't willing to click on there or to go in there. And I love that you've always kind of created that welcoming environment to where, those that are allies, those that are new to figuring out kind of their role, also feel very welcomed in this space. And so I'm curious, is there any lessons that we can kind of take from, the early days of girls in tech, as well as to where we're at today, as far as, like, ways that, those that identify as male can play a role, but also where this kind of collectiveness kind of comes together, because it's not just about, male, female, but it's also about, true identity. And, I love, one of my projects I really like is the Expansion Punks. And the Expansion Punks was one of the very first projects that I found that was going out of their way to make sure that it wasn't just male, female, that they were also representing non-binary within their collection as well. And being in Twitter Spaces and hearing multiple parents come up and say that it was the first time they found an NFT collection that they could share with one of their children, that they could actually be seen in the collection. And it really, hit me very deeply. So I'm curious, can you give us a little bit of, like, some of the things that you've seen over the years that allows a lot of this, like, true collaboration? Because really what you're doing with this project, which I think is just beautiful, is you're doing what you've always done, bringing together all these great minds, these great leaders, and you're allowing us all to kind of learn together. And I think we can all learn from that and take our own little role in that moving forward.
Thank you, Brian. You made so many great points in there. So let me see if I could maybe frame the equation this way. First, you are right. Having male allies is so very important. And in fact, some of the numbers, we shared it actually South by Southwest last year. They invited us to come in and chat about this in a panel, that young girls starting out are 5 times more likely to explore STEM if their father, uncle, a male figure in their life encourages them. And in fact, when I started, we started a group of Women of the Cloud, Women of EC2 at AWS. I started to target not just the women in the group, but I started to target dads of daughters. I called them DODs. And the reason was that they were very interested in making sure that the next phase of the internet was very inclusive, because they wanted their daughters, their nieces, to be included in that conversation. So I do feel that male allies are really important. When we talk about diversity, if you leave half of the room out, regardless of which half you're leaving out, it's not good. So I think that that's one major point that you made that is critical, that this is not just for women. I encourage any male that's listening out there to get involved and get engaged and support, as well. So I think that's a really powerful point. I think the second one is how you get engaged is, anytime you learn when you're having fun. So one of the things that we learned for girls in tech is that if we wanted the next generation to consider technology, we needed to address it and gear it to something that was a fun way to learn that they could relate to. So, for example, with 360 Fashion, who's also part of our Women of Web3 movement, they created these kits for younger girls to put together. It was putting together a ring, and the ring had a gemstone in it with an IoT sensor. And the IoT sensor, if you touched it, first of all, the ring was beautiful, so it didn't look like something ugly. It was a beautiful ring. And if you touched the IoT sensor, though, it would call the police if you were being assaulted, or it could call your parents or your best friend. But you had to code that linkage from the IoT sensor to the back end, which we did with AWS. It was so fun. We were just overwhelmed with a number of young girls who wanted to come to the class to build this ring, really focusing on building this ring that could, call their best friend or call someone, not realizing the technology that they were learning at the same time. We did the same thing with AWS with our Deep Racer. It's a race car. It has IoT sensors in it. You race it around a track. The number of women and girls who wanted to race that car around the track was amazing. And of course, as they're doing that, they're learning about IoT. They're learning about artificial intelligence, about reinforcement learning. So I think one of the great things is, in your audience, you have to figure out what appeals to them. Hence why we try to do Twitter Spaces and try to make what we're doing fun. And stay tuned, because there'll be more to come after March 8th as well.
I love that. And the part about fun is, and also I think the different approaches, right? We all learn differently. We all consume differently. I think sometimes we get stuck in, we end up putting things, in context in only one format, right? And it's actually what spurred this podcast was, I am one, that is neurodiverse with, ADHD and dyslexia. And for me, I learn via podcast. When people ask, how I consume, how do I stay on top of things? It's social audio and podcast. And when I looked and was searching in the podcasting apps there in October and in September of last year, I was really just dumbfounded that so many of them were only, interview based. There wasn't very many, I would say, evergreen style content of education in the podcasting format. And, I also understand that, podcasts aren't for everyone. And a lot of people that don't even know that the podcasting app is already installed on their iPhone. And for a lot of people that's kind of like news to that space. And so I think it's so important that you brought that up. I will also say, for those that, when you go to the website, and I'm a, set this up for those that are listening, one of the things that we also have to do is not only just lift up the great leaders that are taking strides, in diversity and inclusion. We also need to support the brands that are willing to partner, willing to step up to the plate. And I will say, when you can check out the link here in the bio for those who want to check out the event. For me, I made a note, and I'll give everybody, this is kind of like my way of doing things, is that I went into the partner list that Sandy, you've put together for this event, and I went to each of their Twitter accounts, and I added them to a private Twitter list on my side. And what I thought was, I'm going to make sure that I amplify these brands, these businesses in Web3 that are willing to, put their, maybe it might not even be their money where their mouth is. Maybe they're just putting their time or their resources or their solutions, out there. And so I'm curious from, we both come from like that Web 2. A lot of it is like legacy enterprise tech, especially some of the bigger enterprise tech brands. From a standpoint of kind of like bringing this kind of full circle, what have been some of the like aha moments for people to kind of get what Web3 means? Because I know you must get it as well. I feel like on a daily basis, there are people that are now coming to saying, Brian, I now understand what you were talking about when you talked about blockchain in 2013. I now understand what you're talking about artificial intelligence not, taking our jobs away, but rather allowing us to highlight the skill sets that we have as humans. So how are those Web3 conversations happening in your circle, both within those that are in Web3, but also those that are kind of slowly becoming adopters?
It's a great question. It's kind of interesting because I think the best way to describe it is to compare it to Web 2. So, for example, I was so excited, part of my signing bonus for coming on to Unstoppable was I got a lazy lion. Some press picked up on that, and people were calling me, coming out of the woodwork. They're like, why the heck did you want an NFT for a signing bonus? I can send you lots of JPEGs. And so, I tried to compare an NFT to a collectible like they do today, right? I collect these things called glassy babies. They're handmade candles out of Seattle. I lived in Seattle for Amazon. My mother collects Ted Williams baseball cards because when she was 18, she went on one date with the famous Ted Williams. If you don't know, he's a famous baseball player.
Wow.
Time past.
That's
Yeah.
impressive. I'm impressed. Yes. Oh, yes.
So
Big fan.
So she has all these baseball cards of Ted Williams. Makes my dad mad, by the way. But she collects those, and they have to be collected. I mean, she collects them. They're verified. And I explained, I could go and I could take a picture of that, but I don't own that. Owning is not about keeping others from enjoying it. It's about proof of ownership. And so once I explain that, then people start to get it. Oh, okay, now I see. And NFT is also about the community, right? So when you buy an NFT, there's this whole community aspect that comes along with it. If I tweet something out today, all those lazy lions, they tweet. I'm a big supporter of Nyla. Nyla will retweet me because I'm part of that long neck community supporting. She's 13 years old. She's a young Black female, and she's going to be on our Twitter spaces teaching other kids how to get into this space. So I think you just have to relate it back to, the Web 2 world. I find that helps a lot of people. One of the big inhibitors that I see as well is that people are like, oh, well, this doesn't work or this is really hard. Well, Web 2 was hard at the beginning. It wasn't a great technology. I like to say that we're in the dial-up phase of Web 3. What was that movie? There was a movie. I think it was You've Got Mail. Where they had that that AOL sound.
Oh yes, yeah, it was.
You Got Mail.
Yeah, it was. You Got Mail. Yep.
Movie? Okay, that's where we are today in Web 3. It doesn't mean we're going to stay there. We're super early. It is hard. I just imagine Discord and I have sweats. It's super early. Yes, blockchain is not all the way there yet, but it will scale eventually. This will become more user friendly. So when I try to describe early days of Web 1 and early days of Web 2, all these problems existed. People start to get it, but it is hard. It does take time to really understand it.
And I think that, I think that's such an important part too, is that Web 2 wasn't, it wasn't like Web 2 was, immediately adopted, and also different phases of Web 2 were pushed back, right? The idea that, why would a brand ever have an Instagram account, right? Or why would an executive ever need to invest in their personal brand? And I think it's so interesting now that a lot of those things like employee advocacy that you were leading at IBM, I use that story. I've actually probably shared that here on the podcast a couple of times as well. Is I used IBM social business team as kind of my example and tent pole when I would go to these other companies to work with them on how do we get the amazing talent that are inside your organization? How do we highlight them outside the organization? And IBM, which I think for many you would consider not only the company that's been around for a long while, but a company that wasn't going to be the one that we expected to do that. And I remember just being amazed by a lot of the things that were led there. And I think that is such an important kind of path to recognize that, yes, Web3 might feel like, I like that you said that dial-up phase. We are in those, early days, and we're helping to shape the culture. And I think that's also why it's so important that right now is the time that we have to step up for, inclusion and diversity. We can't wait any longer, because we will fall into the Web 2, the Web 1 trap, where, those things become either put to the back burner, or that the adoption is at so high that we really struggle to put those, seats at the right tables. And I think it's beautiful that, this month of March, we can kind of lean into that as well. Sandy, as we kind of pull this, together, I love, what you're doing with, digital identity and with Unstoppable. I love the world, the event with the Women of Web3. if you put like a year from now, and I'm not going to say predict on NFTs because I think NFT predictions is near impossible. But what are some of the things that, like, if a year from now, what are some of the things that if we accomplish or if we start to move these needles, you'll feel like, hey, we're going in the right direction. There's some things that you could think of like on that say, wow, like this is where we really need to be in a year or so.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things. Some are related to this Women of Web3 and some are not. One, I hope in a year from now that we do improve ease of use and UX, because I think that's going to be critical to more mass adoption. And that means more women coming engaged in this as well. So I'm hoping in a year from now that we're going to improve that. Part of my mission, I'm talking to a lot of these design schools right now. I just was on Startup Grind telling startups this UX and this design issue is so important in Web3, and it's a big gap. You guys need to go jump in that. You'll be able to make a lot of money. You'll have a lot of purpose and a lot of fulfillment. So that's one. I think in a year, we have to fix that UX challenge. Two, I'm hoping in a year that I'm not still going to all of these, NFT conferences and only seeing, guys. I want to see all the voices represented. And that doesn't just mean women. I want women. Part of the pledge that everybody signed as one of the companies to be here, part of our pledge was that we want to make sure that underrepresented groups, women, racial, ethnic minorities, people identifying as LGBTQIA, those from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, that we would have inclusive education and that we would have a seat at the table. So we're right now trying to figure out how to measure that. In fact, some of our member companies have done surveys, and we're going to benchmark year over year to see the change. I mean, we would like to take this up 5x for the voices from these, women and minority groups to be much, much greater. And I think the other big prediction I would have, which you would imagine I would make, Brian, is that your Web3 identity will become more and more your gateway to the metaverse. I don't think many people realize the relationship between the metaverse and Web3. And I like to describe it as, kind of blockchain is one of the fundamental technologies of Web3. Web3 is built on blockchain, but the metaverse is built on Web3. So if you think about it, the metaverse requires Web3 and blockchain. And that Web3 identity is the way that you're going to access the metaverse in this two-sided marketplace. So I think it's really important that we kind of be able to put all the pieces together and talk about it and understand, where we're headed in the future.
I love every second of that. And I think, the metaverse side of this, connecting so many of these dots, is so important. And I think it's also important for us to recognize, as we reimagine this future, we do have, the power to reset the culture, reset, where we give access to people in all countries and all walks of life. And I think that's such an important, conversation that can be had. And I think the metaverse is going to open up some doors in ways that we really haven't even imagined yet. So for those that are now, inspired and motivated, they're listening to the podcast episode. Can you give us one list, the little bit of the details again for March 8th, which is International Women's Day. I believe it starts at 9 a.m. Pacific, and I'll drop the links in there. But if you can give us that last call to action, and then we'll wrap up for the episode.
Yeah, so we actually have a couple of things you can participate in. I did pin the tweet with the website. Our YouTube will go off at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and that'll be 1 hour of the very basics of Web3. So it'll go through what is decentralization. We go through like 10 words you must know. It's really 101. And we did it on YouTube because we felt like even a lot of folks may not even have a Twitter ID to get into Twitter Spaces. In addition, we're doing a 24-hour Twitter Spaces, and this one, Brian, you're going to love. It starts at midnight Pacific time, and it goes the entire day, 24 hours. And so we'd love for you to join us. The entire Twitter Spaces schedule is also out on the website, and many of the amazing women who are listening in right now will be doing sessions, and I'm going to go learn there too, because it's all levels of education, new news, and it's just going to be amazing. And then the last thing we're doing on International Women's Day is we are producing a list of the 100 inspirational women of Web3. And I wanted to do this because there are so many. As I started talking to all these companies, there are amazing kick-ass women in this space, but people just don't know about them. And so I wanted to publish a list. I didn't do a top list or 25. I wanted to do the volume. So we're going to do 100 inspirational women on March 8th, and then we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again. Because I believe to be it, you have to see it. And you're going to see these incredible women doing it today from, 13 years old to, I think the oldest on the list is like 83 years old. It's just amazing what these women are doing from all walks of life, Black, brown, military. I mean, it's just amazing. You're going to love that list. So join us in our community. If you're, just starting out, Girls in Tech has this mentoring platform that can also help you. And don't forget to participate in our auction, because these amazing NFT groups, Brian, have donated. They didn't donate their, worst NFT either. Many of them even developed a new NFT. So you'll see a Frida in there that was specifically drawn just for this auction to honor unstoppable women of Web3. So I'm just so incredibly excited, by what's happening out here as well.
Well, Sandy, I'm excited for the event. I'm excited for the doors it opens. A lot of the collections that you mentioned, I'm very happy to see that many of them are in our collection here with Mint 365, where we're buying an NFT every single day, and also many of the people that are part of the program itself are either existing guests or upcoming guests. I know we have some upcoming guests with a friend, Kathy Hackle, is going to be joining the podcast. We have a whole slew of some amazing leaders, and many of them are on that list, as well. And as we kind of pull the podcast episode together, I'm very blessed to have fellow strong, amazing women leaders in tech that I can call good friends. And one of them is Miss Brooke J. Lacey, who was on our podcast not too long ago. And Brooke is without question a leader in disruption and pushing things forward in the space. And Brooke, I saw that you were in the audience, and I usually kind of do my own little kind of send off for the podcast. But I would love for you, if you have your own take, Brooke, or a question for Sandy as well. I will open the mic to you, and then we'll kind of close it up afterwards.
Hey, Brian. Hey, Sandy. I'm such a big fan of yours, by the way. So I'm just like, what a pleasure to come up and ask you questions. And thank you for that intro, Brian. You're such a gem, and you know how I feel. Like what you're doing in this space is so important. But Sandy, I'm so happy to be in your presence. There are so many of us women technologists out there that look up to people like you, and just really like not necessarily want to emulate, but want to do, forge our own path, but in the same light. So I'm wondering, how would you tell other women in this field how they can go about being mentors? I know I've been doing it sort of locally, and would love to take it, in a global sense. I've done it in different ways, social media wise, but what is your recommendation for becoming a mentor, even just for other women? And just thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Brooke. I'm so touched. I'm almost speechless. So thank you so much for those very kind words. I believe that everybody can be a mentor and should be a mentor. One of my mentors told me once, wherever you are, whatever you do, always reach back and pull one person with you. Can you imagine if every single woman in Web3 did that today? Obviously, we would double the number instantly. So thank you for asking this question. I guess there's a couple of things that I would say, leads to a great mentorship partnership. Would be one, you could join Girls in Tech to get on that mentoring platform. It costs nothing to do that. and you can give back through that platform. The platform is really cool. The way that it links you up, it's like a 6-week commitment to start with, and then you can continue that mentorship beyond that if you really click and you want to continue on. Secondly, I'm, at South by Southwest. I don't know if you're going or not, but in real life, there's also great opportunities to network. And we will be kicking off some in-person mentorships at South by Southwest at this event. And if you're not coming to South by Southwest and you have any kind of event near you, I think that mentorships are stronger when you know each other in person. It doesn't have to be in person, but that's one of the things. I look for local events. I'm right now in Scottsdale because we lost my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law is here, so we're supporting her. And I was like, okay, what's going on with NFTs in Phoenix and Scottsdale? I come to find out that ASU, Arizona State University, is amazing what they're teaching and doing here. And I've gotten engaged in so many things and been able to mentor some of those college girls who are coming up as that next generation. So I have so many ideas here. Brooke, you should join us in some of our Women of Web3 discussions, and let's brainstorm and come up with even more. We would be honored to have you.
Oh my God. I think I'm going to cry. I would be so honored, honestly. Like, I've been working so hard not to make this about, listen, I live in Idaho. I grew up in Chicago and I live in Idaho, and I spent so many years, listen to me getting emotional, so many years just doing like free workshops to get girls into tech. I used to have a computer repair business, so I loved building computers. I still do. But I don't have the time anymore to, I would just do these workshops, and I bring, those old hard drives, of course, the platter hard drives, and we would take them apart. And the look on these girls' faces was just, it was everything to me. And so I've always just wanted to, bring that to the globe. And so I would be honored, absolutely honored.
I mean,
Thank you.
This is what it's all about right here. Now, this is it's like connecting great people with great people to do great things is the beauty of this Web3 space, is the beauty of, the opportunities we have in front of us. So, Brooke, I'm so glad you jumped up and asked that question, and excited to see where that goes. For those that haven't listened to Brooke's episode yet, I will make sure to put that in the show notes, as well, as we had a heck of a lot of fun geeking out. We could have gone many hours, just like we could have here with Sandy. And so, Sandy, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership, not only in, the tech space, but, as a leader that's willing to, as you said, lift those up. And, I shared earlier, with the tweet, I think it's the first one here on Twitter Spaces in our nest. And it was actually, a panel that I was on with, Robin Carey, who unfortunately passed away, but she was one of the early mentors of mine. And I remember sitting on that panel at South by Southwest 7 years ago and being like, wow, like how amazing is it that we have this opportunity to shed light and really bring technology to the masses. And I wouldn't have imagined, or I couldn't have imagined, 7 years later, what this opportunity has provided. So thank you, Sandy, for your time. Thank you for your leadership. I'm excited to see all the other amazing things that we're going to make happen in this Web3 space. And I'm sure we'll do more together with Unstoppable as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Brian. I just also want to say I'm getting some DMs from others. If you guys want to get involved, it's not too late. DM me or tweet me or, reach out in some form or fashion. I'm happy to get you involved as well. I'd love to see, this movement really take off and make Web3 accessible for all. So thank you. Brian, thanks for having me on and for being such a great male ally. I wish you all the best and the most success that you can possibly have. And to all the women and men who joined, thank you for spending time with us. And if you could also help us get the word out, I would be forever grateful. Thank you. Web3 for all.
Yes, Web3 for all. It costs zero gas for retweeting and sharing out on Twitter. Just for those that are curious, there are no gas fees for retweeting and sharing out content. And I also, this world of STEM, and actually Jennifer, who's up here, she reminded me that I guess they're calling it STEAM now because they added the arts to the conversation. I will say, my daughters, when they asked, we were talking to them about, what was the camp that you wanted to sign up for this summer? All three of my daughters said, hey, we want to do, like, one of them's doing a 3D printing camp. One of them's doing a future scientist camp. And for me, like, just the idea that these opportunities are in front of us and that we have, amazing leaders like so many people that are in this room today. The future is bright. We have a lot of work to do, but the future is definitely bright. So thank you everybody for being a part of it. As always, we will see you tomorrow. Make it a great day, friends. Cheers.